Hi, this is Shonnie Lavender, the Conscious Moms Coach. And today I am delighted to be talking to you about an emotion. And it's an emotion that many of us struggle with in our families. And we struggle with it both when we feel it as parents, and we struggle with it when our children feel it as well. And I would like us to not struggle with emotions. So that's why I want to share this video with you today. I have some ideas for you to help transform this emotion. And this emotion specifically is anger. And it's the emotion that, again, many of us, when we feel it, we struggle with, well, what do we do with it? How can we be authentic and yet not harm others with our expression of our anger? And when our children are angry, we often struggle in a similar way. On the reverse side, though, is, well, how can we not squash their emotions, and how can we help them have healthy emotional expression without hurting other people, or still being able to work in cooperation with the rest of the family. So things like that. So I think we have some misunderstandings and sort of bad programming around anger. And so that's part of what I want to clear up today. So for most of us, and I'm making broad generalizations here, and this is based on lots and lots and lots of conversations and experience with other people in families and in the work I do, but also outside of that. So most of us have an experience in our past where and I'm talking particularly in our childhood, when the adults around us got angry, that the expression of their anger at some level felt violent towards us as the children. So sometimes it was actually, literally violent, where we might have been spanked or hit or otherwise physically or verbally abused. Even if that wasn't the case, we may have had adults around us who yelled or slammed doors or did things that, as a child, especially as a smaller child, smaller than the adults around us, that can feel very scary, right? It's like, oh, what is this? So for many of us, there was an association with angry as an emotion and violent expression or uncomfortable expression. So for many of us, that's still tied together. It's like in this big hairball knot where we get concerned with, okay, that's how we tend to then express ourselves when we're angry, is we're repeating those same patterns that we've inherited. And so I want to today talk to you about something you can do with anger instead, because anger, unlike what we think, we being humankind, we tend to label emotions, and we say, oh, there's these good emotions over here: joy, happiness, elation, satisfaction, pleasure. Then there's these bad emotions, anger, sadness, fear, grief, whatever our own upbringing has taught us to label as good emotions and bad emotions. But there's not. That's a myth. There are no good and bad emotions. And so what I want you to experiment with is playing with, hey, anger is a really valuable emotion. So my thinking around anger, and there are many others who echo this, is that anger, there's two things I want to say about it. One is that anger, part of what it is it is a state that we get in when our experience of life has some component of things being unfair, unjust, unkind, not okay with us. So in essence, when we feel angry, part of what our spirit, our person is saying is, no, this is not okay. And I don't know about for all of you out there. I know for me and many of the clients that I coach, one of the things that we're wanting for our children is we want them to be able to have, especially if they're girls, because this is something that historically has not been allowed to the females of the population. We want them to be able to have that strong voice that can say, no, heck no, hell no, whatever expression it is, but we want them to be able to have that strength and that conviction to be able to fully throated stand up when things are not, from their perception, doesn't mean it's reality, but from their perception, when they say, hey, this is not okay with me. So that is part of what anger is doing. It's when we see things out in the world, or things are happening to us or happening to others or happening to the planet, happening to any part of creation that we care for, that part of us gets riled up. And so we're like, yeah, we want to say this is not okay. The second piece about anger that you may or may not realize is that anger often is a cover for other emotions. So let's go back to something, let's say as a child, something happened that maybe your parents got divorced. I know that happened in my own childhood. So maybe your parents got divorced, and some part of you in that turmoil of that change is feeling really unsettled, right? And it's like, oh, I don't know, and I'm scared, and what's going to happen, and now what I thought was going to be is not, and so I don't feel grounded. I feel unsafe. So that is more vulnerable place, right? So now we're like, oh, I don't know. That's sort of what I would do as a body motion of it, like, oh, there's this. So that often, because it's vulnerable, feels vulnerable to us, and that can be really uncomfortable. So instead of being in that vulnerable place, often, and it's more of an automatic, it's not like we go, let me think, I'd like to not feel so vulnerable, so I think I'll feel angry instead. It doesn't happen like that. But anger then comes in to help protect us as a shield, like, okay, this is not okay, you big jerks, mom and dad, what's wrong with you? So that can be that, now I'm mad about it. And yet underneath is that tender soreness. It's like, oh, I'm scared and I'm uncertain. So I share all that to help you understand a little bit differently. Again, anger has real value, and it's there for a reason. We don't have it for no reason. So here's the challenge, though, right? Is that anger, especially with our own historical ways we've experienced it, and that we usually see it out in the world around us, often has a violent or forceful expression that comes with it. So here's what I want to say about that is, you have probably noticed that when you come at somebody in a very angry way, whether your way is to yell or to be big or to talk in a sarcastic way or a harsh way, whatever your anger expresses itself as, when you come at somebody in that way, usually what happens on the other side is their defenses go straight up. Because it's like, whoa, this is, again, our mammal and our other instinctual development has said, hey, I sense danger over there, and so I'm going to prepare myself to protect myself. So when we come at somebody in our anger, usually what's happening is we're going to trigger their defenses. And so now we are, instead of really communicating at maybe a more effective level with each other, we are sort of more on that primal level, like, oh, I get that you're angry, you get that I'm angry, and so we're like signaling each other with our bodies and our facial expression and our tones of voice, all those things. So we're communicating, and yet if part of what we want to do when we feel anger is to be heard and have our perspective understood, being angry at somebody and coming at them in our anger is not going to be very effective. So here's my invitation to you with this video, is I want to encourage you to play with anger. So when you feel it in yourself, rather than freaking out and being like, oh gosh, I got to shut this down, I can't express my anger, from all that old gunkety gunk that you've got in your mind about anger and it's being bad, I want you to simply notice, oh, I'm feeling anger. And other versions of anger include things like irritation, frustration, annoyance. So again, if you're feeling some variety of those emotions, I invite you to go, oh, that's a little flag for me. I'm feeling that. And then once you notice that, I invite you to look deeper. What is it that's underneath that? What is that tenderness? And I'll give an example from my own life in just a minute, but that's what I'm inviting you to do. So when you feel anger, be like, yay, I feel it, I notice it. And then let that be your signal to say, I'm not going to express that, perhaps. I am going to let that be my signal to say, hey, Shonnie, or hey, Sam, or hey, Jill, let's look deeper and see what's underneath that. And from there, what you then do is express more the truth of that. And you can still bring the anger in. You can still say, I'm feeling really frustrated, or I'm so annoyed right now, or I'm really on the edge of some big anger. You can still do that. You can still say, hey, this is part of what's going on. I want you, though, to dip down into what's underneath that so you can express that. And I'll give the example in just a minute. I want to share what you can do with your children. Similarly, it's sort of in reverse. When they are angry, rather than that part of you thinking, oh, got to shut it down, got to keep them from hurting other people or do that. Yes, there's skill building depending on the age and developmental stage of your child. You may have a fair amount of work to do with that. Nonetheless, part of what I invite you to do is let their anger be a flag to you again, to be like, oh, Mom, Joe he's upset about something, and there's probably something underneath that. So rather than trying to shut down his emotional expression, yes, you want to do things to help keep people safe, and yet be curious about what's underneath that. Why is he having this upset that feels like I need to protect myself? I need to be strong and big and loud or forceful. So use that to be curious and like, what's underneath there and how can I support that so that you don't have to rely on anger to try and protect you. It's like, oh, you're feeling really sad that sister took your truck. Or you're really upset that brother gets to go on, this outing that you don't get to go to. Whatever it is, use that, their anger as a flag for you to become more curious about what's going on. So let me share a quick example, and then I'm going to wrap up unless there are any questions. So a couple days ago, we were preparing for dinner, and my daughter, who is almost 8, she was in a mood where a lot of what she was verbalizing was dislike, dissatisfaction. Don't want this, don't want that. And I was noticing that I was, and my husband and I were in the kitchen, we were preparing dinner and, excited about, hey, we're going to have this yummy meal. It's something we all enjoy, so on and so forth. And so I noticed as she was expressing herself that I was starting to feel irritated. And my irritation, the more she expressed herself, the more it started to rise. And I was like, my shoulders were going up and I could feel like, okay, I'm not angry. I'm really annoyed though. And so thankfully, that was one of those times I remembered what I know. And I said to myself, okay, I'm annoyed. So what's underneath this? And what I did in that moment after I checked in was like, oh yeah, I'm feeling disappointed and there's things I'm wanting. So I talked to my daughter, I said, can I talk to you for a minute? And I was very calm because I wasn't so much in that annoyance bubble anymore, because I was aware of, annoyance was there to help protect me because here's what's underneath. And so I, from that place, then communicated with her some of what was going on for me and some of what I wanted. And she, although I didn't know it right in that moment because she was still a little like, and then I started to get irritated again. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to be quiet because I can tell if I talk some more at that point, I was going to do some things that I was likely to regret. So I zipped it. I went back to preparing dinner. And about 4 minutes later, we all sat down and my daughter ate the whole meal. She was like, ooh, this is really good. And she was genuine and she was like eating it and loving it. And my experience, that's one example. My experience though, when I am able to do things like that, and when my clients are able to do things like that, they use their anger as a signal to get to what's really there, and then they communicate from that space. then the other person is much more able to hear you. And so again, it's like, if you think about, well, wait, what am I really wanting? If what you're wanting, in the case with me, was, I was wanted to be respected, I was wanting to be appreciated, I was wanting to be given a chance in terms of, hey, I made this dinner, see how it works. So I was wanting those things. And based on past experience, if I had just come in and been mad at her and communicated to her from that space, she would have been defensive about it. And likely she would have, and she has before when I've come from that space, as I have. Then she gets defensive, then she gets upset. And now we have more yelling, more tears, more upset. And so we're more disconnected, and it takes longer to get us back together. And this was literally like a minute and a half of this little conversation. And then it was like, okay, we're done. And then here we are having this lovely dinner 4 minutes later. So that's what I invite you to do, is transform how you see anger, how you look at it, both when it's in you and when it's in your children, and then use that as a way to have a deeper connection with what's really alive, what's really going on. And from there, communicate that, because that's what you're really wanting. That's what you're going for. It's like, yeah, you have something, some voice to express. And so to be most effective in that, you need to be able to do it in a way that's going to be heard. And anger is a great emotion. And yet, usually when we're expressing ourselves in the heart of anger, it's very hard for anybody else to actually hear us very well. So that's what I want to share with you today, because I would really love us all to have a different energy towards anger, and I would love us to have a different inheritance for our children with anger than we ourselves inherited from our own parents, who were doing the best they could. And yet, again, a lot of misunderstandings about anger and a lot of expressions of anger that made it easy for us to have that negative connotation today. So I'm going to check in on Facebook in just a minute. For those of you that are new to my videos, I am here most weeks. Summer, it's been a little change up on which day, but usually Thursday, maybe Tuesday. But I'm here about this time talking about conscious parenting topics. So if you want to see more of these videos, make sure and like my page so you'll be notified when I am live. I also put a link in the description to my closed Facebook group, the Conscious Moms Circle. And that's for moms and dads, for anybody who really wants support to be on a conscious, loving parenting path. So feel free to check that out and join it if it seems like the fit for you. If you want to find me in other places, I have an Instagram feed. I have a YouTube channel, which this video will go on to. Some of you may be watching it there. I have my website, ShonnieLavender.com, of course, the Conscious Mom Circle on Facebook. So you can find me a lot of those places and all kinds of things. So reach out to me if I can support you in your conscious parenting journey. I have some complimentary sessions if you want to investigate the options that coaching provides. I also have some online programs and things like that. So I'm Shonnie Lavender. I'm the Conscious Moms Coach, and I really am glad you were here with me today. And as always, if you have comments or questions about this video and the topic, please post them and I'll do my best to respond to you. All right. Thanks so much. Have a great day.